morning everyone, welcome back to my channel and to today's video. I hope you're all okay. So today's video is going to be a sew along video and I'm going to be sewing up the Logan Shacket pattern by Style Arc. So this is a pattern that I keep saying I'm going to do as a sew along because I made a wearable 12 version a little while back now, and a couple of people, well quite a few people actually, asked if I would do it as a sew along because they were quite interested in the pattern and also interested to see how Style Arc patterns work and things like that. So yeah, I'm really excited to be recording this as a sew along for you today and I hope you'll enjoy it. So if you're new to my channel is all about sewing. I post lots of sew alongs, fabric hauls, things I've been making, sewing plans and things like that. I'd love you to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, if you're into sewing and making as well. And if you do enjoy today's video, please do give it a like, and as always I'd love to hear from you in the comments as well. So do leave me a comment if you'd like to. So this is the Logan Shacket. I have shown it quite a few times in various videos, but just in case this is the first video that you're stumbling across today, this is the Logan Shacket pattern. It's by Style Arc, as I say. So it's a very oversized shirt pattern which you can really make as either indoor wear, or you can make it in a more of an outerwear fabric and have it as an sort of an overshirt that you can wear over jumpers and wear outside in the colder weather, I guess. So as you can see from the line drawings here, hopefully, it's a traditional sort of shirt shape pattern. So it has a traditional curved hem at the bottom. There aren't any sleeve cuffs, which is quite nice. So the sleeves are quite nice and easy to construct. It does have a proper shirt collar and a collar stand, which is probably the most difficult part of this pattern. And then the back has this really nice curved yoke detail as well. So lots of sort of traditional shirt elements are involved in this pattern, but as the construction goes, it's not too difficult. And even though Style Arc patterns, the instructions can be a little bit more on the vague side, I did find last time that the pattern was really well drafted and there were quite a few little pointers on the actual pattern pieces as well, just to help me along the way. So yeah, that's what the actual pattern looks like. So this pattern is very oversized and I'm only 5'3", and I do tend to have to shorten things quite a lot. So I'll just quickly talk you through the alterations that I made for my first version of the pattern. So over on the Style Arc website you can find all of the sizing details for the sizes that they use. So their sizes are really inclusive. They range from a size 4 to a size 30. So based on what my actual measurements are, I think the sizing would have put me at around a size 8 in these measurements. But because this pattern is so very oversized, this time I actually went for a size 4. There's actually a whopping 7 inches of ease in this pattern. So I didn't want it too oversized. I know the pattern is oversized, but I didn't want it to absolutely swamp me. And I knew that based on the finished garment measurements in the pattern here, that would still give me enough ease to feel comfortable wearing it over, say, a thin jumper or something like that. So I think if you are going to make this pattern, just make sure you take into consideration your actual measurements and then check the finished garment measurements just to make sure that you're happy with the amount of ease in the finished garment, because yes, it is quite oversized. And because it comes up quite long as well, I knew that I wanted to shorten the pattern. So I actually took out of the pattern 3 inches from the back and the 2 fronts, and I've also taken some length out of the sleeves as well, and I'll just show you how I did that quickly. So this is my pattern piece. You can see how large it is, and this is actually with my 3 inches taken out. So I've obviously printed it off as a PDF. You can buy this as a paper pattern as well if you prefer. I really like how easy this was to print out actually, because as a PDF it comes with the option where you can just print the size that you want, and I find that so easy. And PDFs are obviously cheaper than buying paper patterns, and when you can just print out your own size, I just find it, yeah, so much easier really. So yeah, I printed out my size, and the only thing with these patterns, I don't know if it's the case for all Style Arc patterns, but certainly with this one, there wasn't a lengthen and shorten line included in this pattern, so I had to work out how to shorten the pattern myself. So the way that I did that was I did Google a little bit about the best way to do that. and basically you need to look along your grain line. So the grain line in the pattern here, hopefully I'm showing this right on the camera. So my grain line is running down here. So you need to find a point on your pattern where your grain line is running down the middle, and you kind of have quite a sort of straight part of your pattern, I guess, where you can take out your 3 inches and your sides are still going to match up quite well. I'm probably not explaining this very well, but basically I've cut my pattern here, and I've cut that along the grain line. It's kind of in the middle of the shirt, so I know that the bulk of what I'm shortening is going to be taken out of the middle of the fronts. So I've literally drawn a line through the straight grain of the pattern, and I've cut out 3 inches, and then I've taped it back up together, and if necessary just redrawn the sidelines where I've changed the shape of the pattern slightly. I hope that makes sense. And obviously, because I've shortened the front, I then needed to shorten the back, and I've also shortened the pockets slightly as well, because the pockets are really quite large and I didn't want the pockets to swamp my newly shortened pattern. So I think if you are going to shorten a pattern by that amount, or quite a lot, then you certainly need to take into consideration the other elements in the garment, like pockets or anything else that's going to be on the front that might just look a little bit oversized compared to how much you've shortened the garment. So with regard to shortening the back of the pattern, I just shortened the bottom of the back. I didn't make any changes to the yoke. I left that the length that it was, and I just literally shortened the bottom part of the back just by 3 inches again, just so that it took it up to the same length as the front. And then with my sleeves, again, I went on the finished length of the sleeves based on what the pattern told me the finished length was going to be. Saw that it was going to be absolutely huge. The sleeves are turned up anyway, so you do want a bit of extra length there, but even with that extra bit of turn up length, they were just going to be absolutely huge on me. So I took out 2 inches of my sleeve, and I've just done that in exactly the same way as I explained I did with the front, and I've found a suitable place along the straight grain, and I've just literally cut out 2 inches, and then I've taped my pattern back up again just to make it that little bit shorter. So I've actually cut out all of my pattern pieces already. I much prefer to do that if I'm going to be sewing. I prefer to do that a couple of days before or the day before. I don't really like to cut and sew on the same day. I just find it all a bit much. So I've already cut out all of my pattern pieces, and for this version I'm going to be using an acrylic blend coating fabric, and it just has this lovely plaid pattern on it, and it does have a little sort of gold fleck running through the beige of the plaid, which I think is quite pretty. So hopefully that's going to work nicely as an outerwear shacket for springtime, and hopefully it should be nice and easy to sew up. It doesn't look as though it's going to fray too much or anything like that, and hopefully it should press nicely. So everything's cut out and ready to go. So this time, one slight change I've made to my cutting out is just to cut my yoke out on the bias, which just gives it that sort of opposite direction of the way that the plaid runs, so that just gives a little bit of more of a nice detail, and also you don't have to get all of your checks to match up either, which is quite nice. So yeah, everything's all cut out and ready to go. So I'm going to get my little sewing space set up now, and I'll just chat to you as I normally do about what I'm doing and how everything's going, and I hope that'll be okay. Okay, so I'm all set up and ready to go, and I just thought I'd film a quick sort of shot of me setting up my sewing space, because I always sew on a dining table, don't have a sewing room or anything like that, so I do have to get everything out every time I sew. So I thought it might be interesting just to see my little sewing setup. And I don't know if you saw from the video, but I actually keep my sewing machine on our IKEA Kallax unit, which I keep all of my fabric and everything, my overlocker and everything on as well. But I always have to lift this heavy beast into one of the shelves on the Kallax unit. And the other day I'd been sewing in the evening and I was really tired, and I had to put away my sewing machine, lift it up and put it into the shelf. And I didn't quite get it in, and the whole thing fell out onto the floor and it just went everywhere. It looked awful, and I thought, oh no, I've broken my sewing machine, I'm never going to be able to sew again and everything. But luckily it was fine, and it hadn't somehow broken. I think everything had sort of spilled out onto the floor, all the little bits in this drawer here and everything, so I just felt as though I'd completely smashed it. But no, thankfully it's okay. The only thing that's a little bit dodgy now is this bit here where it opens and you can see all the sort of machinery inside the door or whatever this is doesn't quite close properly, it doesn't click in, which is really annoying. So whenever I do get my sewing machine serviced, I'm just going to see if they can check that. But yeah, that was a bit of a shock. And that's why sometimes I just wish that I had somewhere that I could just leave everything out and just go to it every now and again, because it is actually really heavy to keep lifting these things around. This sewing machine is a Janome Atelier 6, and it's just so much heavier than my old sewing machine, so it is quite a beast to lift around. So after that happened, we lowered where I was keeping my sewing machine, so it's not quite so heavy for me to lift up and down and everything. But yeah, I just thought I'd tell you that little story. So I'm going to get on and start sewing now. So one thing I forgot to mention actually is that this pattern does include side pockets if you want them. So I'm not going to include the inseam pockets this time because I just don't feel like I need them. I used to love pockets in everything, but recently I've really gone off them because I feel as though they do sometimes ruin or distort the seam lines or the side seams of garments if you can't get them to lie flat, and I just don't really think they're necessary in this particular shacket. So I'm going to leave them off. So the first thing I actually need to do is do my little pockets. Here's one of my little pockets. So what you need to do is you fold over the sort of what do you call this, like the top bit of the pocket, so it sits nicely, and there are notches to tell you where to press over the top of the pocket. So you press that down and then you sew your 1 centimetre seam allowance all around the edge, so you enclose that folded over seam, sew all around the edge at 1 centimetre seam allowance, and then you can flip that over so that's all nice and neat. Obviously I'll press that a bit better and poke out the corners and things. And then where you've sewn the rest of your 1 centimetre seam allowance, it's really nice and easy to see where you need to press your 1 centimetre seam allowance under, just so that you can get that nice neat finish and then top stitch nicely onto the front of your shacket fronts. So that's what I'm doing now. This fabric is quite a cheap acrylic blend. And it really wants to stick to the iron, I've just discovered. So when I'm pressing it, it's pressing quite nicely, but I'm using a pressing cloth. So yeah, just something to keep in mind if you do want to use this fabric. I have to say, I don't think I've found quite the right fabric for what I'm after with this pattern just yet. So I'm still maybe thinking I might try another version after this, but it would be nice to have a few different versions in my wardrobe. Actually, I recently went into H&M and saw a really lovely quilted jacket. So quilted jackets are one of those things where when they first came out, I thought, definitely not for me. They look really old-fashioned. I don't think I'll ever really want to sew a quilted jacket. And now I'm seeing so many nice versions. I'm thinking, maybe I do need a quilted jacket in my life. But I really like the look of this quilted jacket that I saw in H&M, and it did make me think of the Logan Shacket pattern, and yeah, maybe something to try in the future. But I do like this fabric. It's just a little bit of a cheapy one, I guess, and one that's a little bit sort of polyestery and acrylic-y, so you just need to be careful when you're ironing it. Anyway, I'll stop chatting now, go and press my pockets, and I'm going to top stitch them onto the fronts, and I'll just show you that when it's done. Here's a little example of how style up patterns can be slightly vague. So the next instruction says, with right sides facing, sew the top back to the lower back, press the seam up and sew with a twin needle. So what that basically means is sew the top yoke to the bottom of the back, So first time I did that, it did take me a little while to realise what they were talking about. Obviously, if you're using something like a Tilly and the Buttons pattern or something like that, you probably have multiple instructions and multiple pictures guiding you how to do that, because it is a little bit fiddly. Because basically you are, if I can show you, you're kind of sewing a curve in the direction it doesn't want to go. So you've got to sew, oh gosh, how can I show you this? So you've got to sew this bit here into a curve like that. And it's a little bit hard to pin it and sew it flat. So I'm going to attempt to film myself pinning it just to show you how I do it. And hopefully that will help. The instructions do say to twin needle everything. I think that depends on the kind of fabric you're using. I'm not going to twin needle my fabric today because there's just no point. All of the stitching is just getting lost in the plaid pattern, so a twin needle stitch just wouldn't really show up. I'm looking very close up here, I'm not quite sure why. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to attach the top yoke to the bottom back, and then I should have a nice curved yoke. That's my yoke pinned to the bottom back. I pin the two side seams first, and then I find the centre point of the yoke and the centre point of the bottom back, and then I pin that, and then I just ease the rest of the curve in and pin quite liberally. You do have to kind of ease the curve in a little bit because you're kind of pinning on an unnatural curve. It'll feel as though you're not doing it right, but you are. And then once you've sewn it together, it will look like that. Hopefully you can see that. So I'm just going to sew that now, and then I need to overlock that seam, press it up, and then just top stitch it down. Next I just needed to sew my shoulder seams, finish them on the overlocker and press them towards the back of the jacket. So I've done my shoulder seams now, and the next stage was to pin the armholes into your sleeve armistices. Armistice, is that what it is? Sleeve heads anyway. So that's what I've done now. So it is quite a big curve that you need to ease into the armhole. There isn't any gathering that it tells you to do. They do fit in nicely in the end, but you just have to do a little bit of easing to get that big curve of the sleeve head into the shoulder or the armhole, whatever it's called. Let me know in the comments. It is called sleeve armistice, I think, something like that. Maybe I'm not saying it right. Anyway, so I've pinned all that in now, and there is something a bit sort of weird about the instructions being so vague. It does feel as though you're getting through the pattern quite quickly, which is nice. So I need to sew these sleeve heads in, and then I sew up my sleeves and down the sides. That's just how the side seams are done, so there's no setting in sleeves in the round or anything like that. And then yeah, it does feel as though I'm getting along quickly here, because then I just need to do my button plackets and my collar, which are probably the hardest bits. But yeah, I do feel like I'm getting along nicely, and I probably shouldn't say that, because when you say that sometimes things happen, don't they, to put you off your guard. So forget I said that. I'm just going to get on and see how I go. Pinning my sleeve seams and my side seams for the shirt together, ready to sew. And I want to know in the comments how much you bother about pattern matching. I've tried as hard as I can to get my checks to match up here, and they did on my sleeve, but then they went a bit awry on my side seams for some reason. But I'm not going to beat myself up about it too much. I always try to pattern match as much as I can, but I definitely don't bother to kill myself over it. And I don't worry too much if my pattern matching isn't perfect. And I know lots of people have different views about that. Some people are more worried about it than others. I think if I have stripes and things, then I do try and get them matched up as much as I can, because obviously it looks much better and much more professional if you do that. But I certainly wouldn't worry too much if I'd gone a little bit out on my stripes. It definitely wouldn't stop me wearing a garment. So let me know in the comments what you think about that. Just realised I actually had a pin in my slipper. I knew the pin had fallen out while I was sewing and I thought it had gone on the floor. It had actually gone in my slipper, so I was just walking over to the camera to film this bit and thought, oh, something pricking me. Actual pin in my slipper. Oops. Anyway, I think I have something now that looks kind of like a shirt. So I'm getting there. I'm going to be able to see that. But it does look kind of like a shirt. So next thing I have to do is actually turn in the button placket. So there are no actual facings for the button placket. You interface the two front pieces and then there are two notches that tell you where to turn the button placket in, and then you just top stitch it down. So it's really nice and easy, no facings to do or anything like that. So I'm gonna add my interfacing to my bottom front plackets now, and then I'm going to turn those under and top stitch them, and then they will be done. And then we're on to the collar, I think. So my button plackets are all done now. I've just top stitched them down nicely like that, so they're all done. So I'm actually on to the collar now. So this is the trickiest bit, always the worst bit, the collar. So what I've done is just interfaced one of my collar pieces and I've pinned them right sides together. So what I need to do is just sew around the outer edge of the collar, turn it inside out and press it all nicely and everything to give some really nice sharp points, and that will be the top of the collar. And then I need to attach it to the collar stand. So I'll just sew this one and show you how the collar turns out, and then I'll attempt to show you how to attach the collar to the collar stand if I can. So here the pattern told me that I needed to press up 1 centimetre on one of my collar stand pieces. I then needed to sandwich my top stitch collar in between my two collar stand pieces, and there are notches on the pattern which tells you where to match up the end of your collar to the points on your collar stand. So I've just pinned that. You do have to do a little bit of easing in because again you're going against the way the fabric wants to go. You are going on a kind of unnatural curve, getting that collar in properly. And then you need to sew in your collar into your collar stand, and you need to sandwich all of those 4 layers together. So things do get a little bit thick here, so you just need to be careful really when you're sewing that you're catching everything in, and then your collar is sandwiched nice and neatly in between your collar stand pieces, and you can turn everything out then and press it. So I'm just going to sew in my collar to my collar stand now. So here's my nice collar on a collar stand all done. So you can see that this bit inside is actually turned up, and that's because you actually attach the bottom, the unfinished or unpressed edge of the collar to your garment, and then when you fold that bit under you can kind of encase the seam, then you just edge stitch along the pressed edge. So I'm going to pin this all to my shirt now and attach the collar to the shirt, fingers crossed. Something I forgot to mention, and you probably see me struggling a little bit here to get the collar to fit in. There was quite a lot of easing I needed to do, and the pattern doesn't actually tell you to stay stitch the neckline. And I remember last time I made my jacket, I thought I should have stayed the neckline, and this time I forgot to do it again. So if you are planning to make this pattern, the pattern doesn't actually tell you to stay stitch the neckline as you normally would at the beginning of the pattern. So it might be something that you want to do yourself just to make it easier when you do come to fit the collar in. So I got there eventually, but there was probably a bit more easing to do than I should have had to do. My collar's all done now, all folded over. I gave it a little press there on the iron, and then you can see the collar stand underneath. So all I've got to do now actually is just hem it and hem the sleeves. The sleeves just turned up, so I'm going to turn them up 3 centimetres, so 1.5 centimetres and then 1.5 centimetres again, and then the bottom I'm just going to, I think I might overlock it actually because it's quite frayy at the bottom. And then I'm just going to turn it up about 1.5 centimetres as well. And then I just need to do the buttons. So I won't talk anymore, I'll just get on and do those things, and I'll film some of the sewing so that you can see it. And then I will come back and talk to you about it all when it's done. So all done and finished. And hopefully you can see what I mean now by the fact that the pattern does come together really quickly for what it seems to be. So I was really surprised the first time I made this how quickly it came together. I thought it would be a really involved project, and I guess it can be depending on how many details you want to put in, like the twin needle top stitching and things like that. Obviously that would take you a little bit longer, and the inseam pockets as well. Anyway, here's my finished jacket. So I've just added these wooden buttons again. They're actually exactly the same wooden buttons that I used on my first version. I kind of bought those from Hobbycraft in a bit of a bulk buying jar thing. They had like some jars of some wooden buttons, and I've had them for absolutely years. And they came in a light wood and a dark wood, and I've used up all of the light wooden ones on various different things. But I've been left with these dark ones for quite a while, and I've not known what to use them for, so it's been really nice to use some of those up. So yeah, I'm really pleased with this actually. I'm really pleased with how it came together. I am going to put some photos in as well so you can see it on and everything. But yeah, I think it looks really nice in this more sort of heavier weight, I guess. It's not really heavier weight, it's just a bit warmer. It's a bit more of a, it is a coating fabric rather than a cotton, which is what I used before. So yeah, it would definitely be a bit warmer, and I think it would be really nice for sort of transition from spring into summer. So if you're popping out, I could even wear it over the jumper that I've got on today. I've just tried it on and it fits nicely over that. So yeah, I think it would be a good one for sort of light outerwear. So you can see my yoke at the back where I've cut it on the bias. I'm really pleased with how that looks actually, so thank you to the person that recommended in my last video about the Logan where I talked about it a little bit. Someone did recommend that I cut that on the bias next time, so thank you very much if that was you. And then collar, my collar stand, it needs to be a bit flatter there. Hopefully the sew along was okay. I'm never quite sure how much sewing to include, how much talking to include, or whether I've included enough of either of those things. So let me know in the comments below how you found the sew along, and if you do have any questions on anything that I haven't covered about this pattern, do let me know in the comments below. In terms of the fabric, I did forget to mention the fabric. Fabric was really nice. The only thing that annoyed me about it was actually that it didn't press very well, because obviously with this kind of pattern there are quite a few things that it would be nice to get nice and crisp, like the collar points and the pockets and things like that. So it was a bit of a faff to keep having to press under my pressing cloth, but I guess you'd have the same if you were doing another outerwear sort of fabric like a boucle or something like that. That would probably be quite difficult to press as well, so I'm not quite sure how you get around getting those sharp points and things. But other than that, I think this fabric's really nice. Very cheap, as I say, so it depends how you feel about man-made fibres and things like that. It might not be up your street, but I think for just a sort of a cheapy one, it was a really good fabric to use, and it was nice to sew with. It didn't fray too much until the end, where I just needed to overlock the hem before I turned it up, just to give it a bit of a nicer finish. So you can see there on the hem, I overlocked it before I double turned it over, just to stop the fraying and get rid of those sort of annoying thready bits that you get. And then for the sleeves, I've turned them up again here, but I just gave them quite a wide hem so I can actually wear them down and they're not too long, or I can just turn them up over whatever I'm wearing. So I think that's it, everyone. Thank you so much for watching this sew along. If you have enjoyed the video, I'd love it if you gave the video a like. Please do subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I'd love to have you as a subscriber. Take care, everyone, and have a lovely day, and I'll look forward to seeing you in my next video. Bye!